Revelation in the finale, the show is taken in a whole new direction in a fantastic premiere.
I am already there.
Hey guys, remember the season premiere of iZombie, Season 3, Episode 1, Heaven just got a little bit smoother, and finally guys, I have made it. I know it's taken me almost over, just a little over a month to finally get to it, but I have finally now gone to Season 3, and luckily only 2 episodes have aired. I was worried I was going to get into a situation where there'd be like 5 episodes of season 3 that I need to quickly binge, but I'm glad I'm not in that situation because I really wanted to review these episodes individually for you guys because of how much I really do love this show, and especially with the way that season 2 left off. Season 2 ended on a very compelling cliffhanger that really could shake up things dramatically, and after this episode, it really seems like that's where we might be going because there were a few big things about this episode. One, we now finally have Clive as a part of the main group. He's now a lot more integral to the story, as well as Peyton. She's a lot more integral as well. Two, there was no case in this episode. Yeah, I was shocked too, but there was no case. And you guys know I'm not a fan of procedurals. I think it's worked well for this show. Like, season 2, definitely they found a good formula with it. It worked in season 1 as well. But there was no case. And I don't know if the show is starting to move away from that or if it just wasn't in this episode, but there was no case going on. The entire episode was pretty much focused on the events of, reflecting on the events of season 2, and I really loved it overall. This was a really fantastic premiere, a lot of interesting stuff that was set up here, but let's just get into this episode because I definitely do want to talk about it, and we start off right off the bat, basically right where season 2 left off, where we see outside of Max Rager, Vivian's reviewing their story, says that they should claim that the employees went berserk and the guards were forced to shoot them, and Liv suggests that they had Major found Chaos Killer victims in the secret basement lab, and they used it as cover, and then found the Chaos Killer. They're trying to cover up that Major was the Chaos Killer, and Vivian takes the survivors to their campus to debrief them, and Clive points out that there's forensic evidence everywhere, and 2 of Vivian's men then run out, want everyone to take cover, and as they do, an explosion then brings down the building, so Max Rager is done, which I'm happy about. I'm glad that we now have this, looming thread of Max Rager finally closed. After Von Du Clark, I was not really looking forward to another season of Max Rager, and I thought it was crazy. Just literally, the building was exploded, but on the other side of town, Peyton, Blaine, and Ravi give their statement to Kavanaugh as the police take out the 4 dead bodies, and as we know, we kind of were left off where we didn't really know where the whole story was going to go, but Kavanaugh wonders why Boss kidnapped her, and Blaine claims that Boss learned that Blaine had feelings for Peyton, and Blaine is still in that situation where he does not remember a thing about about his history with Boss or anything like that, which again, it gives Blaine this vulnerability, gives us a reason to root for him, which I thought was actually pretty cool the way they did that. But Payne insists that Blaine's feelings were unreciprocated and that she really didn't feel that way. And Kavanaugh points out that Ravi sat outside in the car during the gun battle, and Payne then tells detectives that there can't be any publicity because Blaine gave testimony against Boss, and they just need to keep his name out of it. They want to make sure that he wasn't involved what was going on. Obviously, we know that Boss was going after them, so, Blaine was trying to keep his name out of it. So, I thought that was definitely a really good way to set things up. I thought it really to show how much of a bigger role Peyton is going to play because this season she is the main character, and I'm happy about that. I feel like the show, they've kind of been back and forth. They're kind of like my lights are back and forth right now. That's kind of how they've been with Peyton. So, I'm happy that they finally have found a nice, happy medium for her, because I think she definitely does very well function well into the show, and I'm glad she's in the intro as well, because I've always really liked the relation between Liv and Peyton, and I'm looking forward to getting a little bit more spotlight on that, hopefully at least this season. I'm looking forward to her being a little bit more integral into the story. So at home, Liv considers the fact that she shot Drake 4 hours ago, and she gets drinks for the others, and Major wonders why Boss thinks that Blaine would show up to save Peyton. Why would that happen? So Clive suggests that Peyton was involved with Blaine, and Liv suggests that they not keep any secrets between them, and she explains that she and Major are zombies, and Blaine slept with Peyton, and Clive prefers being out of the loop of some of it, which you can understand. I mean, it's a lot for this guy to process, and remember, this only happened, a couple hours ago. Like, all this stuff has happened to him at once, so you can imagine that this is just a lot of information for him. And Liv tells them that Vivian and her mercenaries are also zombies, and Vivian knows that Liv is a zombie. And Vivian then told her that Seattle's going to be a zombie homeland, and asked if Liv was with her or not. So they took this in a slightly different direction than I thought it was going to be. I wasn't thinking she was going to get like Ravi and Clive and all of them involved, but she actually made a group decision, and I like that. Like she said, look, let's keep secrets out of it, let's not hide things from each other. And it makes sense after 2 seasons of keeping secrets. I'm glad that it seems like everyone really is a team and everyone is working together. That's something that the show does very well and that other shows don't know how to do. Cough Flash, but I'm glad that this show we're starting to move on from that. So Vivian, basically, Clive isn't really big on this idea that they're actually going to do that, which is understandable. I mean, he's the human in the situation. Robbie's a human too, but it kind of does, he definitely plays a bigger role than Clive does. And Liv suggests that they meet with Vivian the next day and find out exactly what she intends on doing that and how she plans on going about that. So Blaine goes back to the mortuary, and again, things are very strange for Blaine because you got Don E there, who I forgot to put Don E in the season 2 review. He's one of Blaine's, accomplices, and he's searching for the money, and Don E figures that Blaine is faking amnesia, and he says that he realized that Blaine made it all happen, and the amnesic Blaine has no idea what he's talking about. Don E thinks that this is just a facade, and that he's not actually, he has not lost his memory, but Don E figures that he's faking amnesia to link up with Peyton, and Blaine is more interested in the fact that it's his business, and Don E and Chief had him working for them, and Don E demands the money, insisting that it's his money, and Blaine tells him to start where Chief hit it, and when Donnie says that he's quitting, Blaine plays along and tells him that he can leave. So again, Donnie doesn't really understand this, so as Donnie goes to the basement to get his bag, he has a thought. He pulls Chief out of the freezer, he notices another body in the bottom half of the green, checks it, and discovers it's Blaine's father, Angus McDonough. Now, we were led to believe that Blaine left Angus to die, and that Angus was, horribly mutilated and things like that, but it doesn't seem like that's the case. It seems like Angus is actually kind of alive and well, and David Ayers has already confirmed that we are going to get at least a 3-episode arc with Angus, which I can't wait for. That scene between Blaine and his father in season 2 is one of my favorites of last season, so I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how that all plays out. But the next day, Major and Ravi drive home. The people have torn up the house and written Chaos Killer on the outside, so, people know that Major's the Chaos Killer. So his life is, dramatically changed this season, and I like that. I like that this is kind of a season where he's trying to redeem himself, and Ravi warns that it will get bad now that Major has been cleared, because, obviously, that evidence of him being the Chaos Killer, that's still out there. It's not completely gone. So later, Liv, Clive, and Major go to see Vivian at the Fillmore Graves campus, and Major tries to get hold of Natalie without success, and they go inside as Vivian watches the fake news story that she gave to the press, and she greets them, and Vivian assures that they have several dozen humans that are fully briefed and that she trusts, and Liv asks exactly what Vivian intends for Seattle, because, Liv is definitely willing to take up her offer, but she doesn't really know what it entails, and Vivian explains that they're preparing for Discovery Day, which are the days when humans and Mossy learn about the existence of zombies. That's, she wanted, basically everyone's going to learn about them, and she figures that the humans won't take it well and explains that several crematorium owners are providing them with brains, and Fillmore Graves is well armed and well trained, and they own the formula for Supermax, which, as you know, if you drink the formula Supermax, you basically start to feel like a zombie, and they're faster and stronger thanks to the substance, and Clive asks if she's declaring war, because it very well seems like that's what she's doing, and Vivian then takes them to this conference room. She shows them an island that they own, and they're moving all zombies to the island and are a year and a half away from completing the infrastructure, and as they walk through the campus, Vivian explains that her husband, Harrison Graves, was actually infected first, and she scratched herself with his hand so that she wouldn't have to live without him, and Harrison found a way to get brains on his own, and then he disappeared. So Vivian hopes to find the zombie that killed him and make him pay. So she is still kind of against zombies, even though she kind of wants them to know. So a dozen of their soldiers went on a mission in a rebel neighborhood, and the general then detonated a biological weapon, and when they came back, they were all sick, so Vivian scratched them and turned them into zombies to save their lives. And yeah, there's a lot of exposition here, but it's exposition that we want. We want to hear what Vivian has really been through. I thought this honestly was really well done. But they watch zombie children go into a classroom, and one boy, Wally, recognizes Clive. Now, we don't don't know what connection Clive has to Wally, but immediately this shows that Clive is going to play a much bigger role into this than we thought, and I really like that. I like that Wally is someone who Clive has a connection with, and he runs over to him, they hug, and Wally asks Clive if Clive is one of them, if he's actually a zombie, and Wally gets called back to class, and Clive says that Wally's family lived in his building for a while, and he clearly has had some sort of a connection with him. So I'm guessing we're going to find out more about that as the season goes on, but Vivian explains that the uninfected shot everyone else on site and figures that other humans will react the same. So you can tell she's got this whole plan figured out. You don't really know how it's going to go. It sets up this very interesting direction, and definitely am interested in seeing, what exactly this is going to go. Because at one hand, she kind of does have a good idea here where she wants humans to know what's going on, but is Liv really ready to let everyone know on what's actually going on with the zombies? I'm not really sure, and I think that really provides some really compelling stakes for this season. So once Vivian ends the tour, Clive then warns Liv and Major that he's wondering if he's supposed to keep Vivian's secret, and Major agrees with Vivian's plan, figuring the humans will wipe them out. Obviously, the humans are just, there's so many more of them. There's not as many zombies as there are humans, and the humans will just do what they can to kill them, and we've seen how easy it is to do. You just shoot them in the head, and that's it. Liv had no problem doing that in the finale. So at the morgue, Liv tells Vivian about Vivian's plan. She'd rather stay on Django's brain so she can deal with Drake's death, and Ravi admits that he's spiraling about Peyton and Blaine together because, as we know, Peyton and Ravi were caught actually making out in the finale. Now it seems like they're going to have problems again, and so Liv tells him to get over it, but that doesn't really help much. He had a real connection with Peyton. He doesn't want Peyton and Blaine to get back together. I'm not looking forward to, a love triangle here. I hope that's not where we're going with this. I kind of want to just see Peyton and Ravi together after 2 seasons, and I hope that we don't have this problem where Peyton's gonna like Blaine and then go to Raw. I just don't want to see that happen. I feel like this is not the show to do that, and the show is better than that, and at least in my opinion, I think the show is much better than that. But at the mortuary, Blaine is removing brains from bodies when Peyton comes in. He quickly covers over the bodies, and Peyton tells him the boss made it to Montenegro on a fake passport, and Montenegro doesn't extradite, and she admits that she would be happier if Boss was captured or killed. She just feels that that should be the best thing to do, and admits that she's jumpy since Boss is on the loose, and she knows that Boss is after Blaine. So Peyton then thanks Blaine for saving her life, and Blaine says it was his fault since she was in that situation, and he says it'll come over if she calls, and admits that he's learned he wasn't really the nicest guy, and Blaine has worked out that they were intimate, and Peyton doesn't know what to say. She's tried to hide the fact that they did have, sex, and that they did have this mutual connection. Now it's coming back to her, now it's getting more and more awkward, obviously. So Major goes to get coffee. The barista recognizes him. When he goes over to get his drink, he discovers that she's written Chaos Killer on the cup. So everywhere Major goes, people are calling him the Chaos Killer, because again, that information's out there, and because of the fact that Clive released Major, it's just made matters worse for him. This is one of those criminals that are just running rabid, and we hear stories about this all the time. For example, I know this isn't, nearly as bad as, what happened, but O.J. Simpson, for example, if you guys have seen People vs. O.J. Simpson, the amount of people that were against him, is very similar to what's going on with the Chaos Killer here, that people are very much against Major, and they don't like that he's, running loose and that he's completely free. They want him in jail, and I don't think that this whole Chaos Killer storyline's gonna be over. I think Major is still gonna have to eventually do time. I think there's gonna be more of a court process here, and I think that definitely is gonna take place some point in the season. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how that plays out, because this very well could be Major's best season yet, and I hope they really do that with him, because that'd be very interesting if that's where that's going. But Clive meets with Ravi at the morgue. Ravi says they only have 17 doses of the cure, and they lack the chemical to make more. So he explains how Cure 2 causes retrograde amnesia, and that the side effects for Major are death because he took Cure 1. So if he does this, he's actually going to just die, and he's going to be gone. So Ravi tells Clive he's working on a cure for memory loss, and demonstrates by sticking extra dodes into a brain in a jar, and he insists that he's close to full memory restoration, but it will only help the 17 zombies who get the cure. And we don't know if Blaine is going to be one of them. Blaine obviously has his memory wiped right now, so is Blaine going to be one of those 17 zombies? We will have to see how that all goes down, but again, I like that stakes are out there. This gives Blaine a more compelling arc. He's less of a villain this season, he's in a more vulnerable position, and I think this really does set up the stakes quite well for Blaine here. I was not looking forward to an entire season of Blaine completely, having this amnesia, but I really did love the way this was set up. So Liv then comes in and says that she's heard conspiracy theorist Chuck Bird has a new show, and he's going to speak to a live witness to the Max Rager massacre. And Clive figures that they need to stop the interview, again, because they don't want humans to know about the zombies. If humans find out about zombies, then zombies will immediately be outnumbered. There's just more of a mass number of humans, and it's really just sudden death for them. So Clive and Liv then drive there. They listen to Chuck's show as he says that he has witnessed Billy cook with him, and they run in as Chuck talks about how the government is plotting against all of them. Billy explains he's a security guard who was working at the door at the night of the massacre, and he describes how half the people were running for their lives and the other half were chasing them and tore them apart when they caught them. So Liv and Clive then pound on the window as Billy says that the killer ate their victims' brains, and Billy recognizes Clive, and Chuck points out the police are trying to stop Billy from speaking, and as Liv and Clive drive away, they listen to Chuck talking about how the government created crazed soldiers that ended up eating brains, and a caller suggests that it's a zombie apocalypse, and Clive suggests that they go to someone high up and tell them the truth of what's actually going on, and Liv warns people like Chuck's listeners they just couldn't handle the truth. I mean, yeah, Clive reacted because he's friends with Liv, but I bet you if Clive was not friends with Liv, he would not have reacted as diplomatic and I think as normal as he did. Like, it wasn't a normal reaction at first, but I don't think he would have been as understanding if Liv wasn't his friend. You know, we know that he was just ready to take him major no matter what. So basically, she lived in more, and she then breaks into tears and says that Django's brain is starting to wear off her. You know, Django's brain has made her be able to kind of put Drake's death on the back burner, and she's really starting to feel the grief over killing Drake. And I really like this scene because we know one of the hardest things I think Liv has ever had to do is kill Drake. I mean, she really did love Drake. Even though he was working for Blaine, he was working for Boss, she still really cared about him, and she still had this compassion for him. And Clive tells her that Drake was already dead, and what she did was merciful, that, you know, she really was just killing an undead. And at the same, he then offers to show her how cops deal with their grief, and I thought that was just a really good scene. I've always really liked Clive and Liv together. I think their scenes are really well done, and Peyton then returns home. She talks on the phone to her friend Lindsay, and Lindsay tells her to check out something online. So the next morning, Ravi then extracts some of the solution from the brain. He prepares to give it to his rats, and as we know, if he gives it to his rats, see if that works. And Clive then brings a drunken Liv in. She says that she'll sleep it off there. She thanks Clive for listening to her, and Clive tells her he's alive because she did what she did. Remember, she saved him, and Liv then passes out. Clive leaves, and Ravi gets a call from Peyton, and Peyton leaves a voicemail that someone's tweeting her ugly stuff, and she needs Ravi's company. So Ravi continues ignoring Peyton's calls. Major comes in, says he has a job despite his reputation as a suspected serial killer. So again, things are not perfect for Major, but I like the way he's kind of going about it. So at the mortuary, Blaine is then playing the organ, which I've always loved. I've always loved scenes where we get to see Blaine play the piano, because David Anders is honestly a really great singer. But Payne then calls him. She asks him to come over and then play cards, and it seems that she wants to have some sort of a connection with Blaine. Like, obviously, he's not the same, like, psychopathic Blaine that we're used to, and we can see his a genuine affection for her, so why not? And Donnie then thaws out Angus. The zombified Angus finally opens his eyes, and Donnie explains that Blaine is faking memory loss, and he figures that the enemy of his enemy is his friend, and suggests they start up their own brain business, and Don E needs startup cash, and Angus agrees. However, he says that Don E is thinking too small. So I like that Angus is still out there. I like the way this is all being set up, that Donnie thinks that Blaine is just faking it when we know he's actually not, and I think definitely that whole storyline is going to be very interesting. It's a different sort of situation with Donnie than we've seen before, and again, that's something I'm definitely looking forward to. But at the morgue, Liv says that she needs a new brain because Django's is clearly warded off, and an EMT brings in a body, says they found it at the Max Rager parking structure, and the CDC lady told them to bring it there. Ravi's former boss, Kathy Cups, comes in, says she's thrilled to be working there. He points out that she had him fired, and Kathy tries to put the best face on it, and they go to work autopsying the body, and Kathy finds brain in the body's digestive tract. Liv and Ravi both get calls that there's been a murder, and they quickly excuse themselves, and before they go, Kathy points out it looks like the body has been dead much longer than the 3 days since the massacre. So this was really cool, the way we ended with the case rather than starting up with the case, something different the show's done before, but again, there was a lot to cover after season 2, so it makes sense why it took so long for us to get a case here. So Ravi and Liv then arrive at the crime scene, and Ravi tells Liv that she's the last person who would think that there were zombies loose. And Kavanaugh then tells him that Clive handed the case off, and there are several victims inside. And the victims are actually shot in the dead, but there's not much blood, and one victim is missing 3 fingernails. So there's a can of Max Rager stuffed in one victim's pockets. They hear Clive from the next room. They go discover that it's actually Wally's room, and Clive comes out. They figure that the 3 people were killed because they were zombies, and the one victim had his fingernails removed to prevent scratching, which again, if we remember, if you're scratched, that's how, that's what happened to Vivian's husband. If you're scratched by a zombie, you still turn into one. So Liv insists that zombies need protection. Clive figures that they won't let him stay on the case because of his connection to Wally, and I like this. I like that we're not going to see Clive investigating this case because he just can't. He has too personal of a connection to one of the victims, and she says they can't let Kavanaugh get close to the truth. Clive tells them they'll solve the murders on their own time, and in her office, Vivian then gets a call about the murder. She goes to the classroom and tells the teacher that Wally is dead, and they tell the students that one of them hugs a grieving Vivian. So yeah, Wally's now dead, which was really shocking, actually, but I was surprised they killed Wally. But again, it gives Clive more of a personal storyline here. Liv then comes to the door, motions Vivian out. They meet, and Liv tells Vivian what they're doing. And as she leaves, she sees Major running with the other mercenaries. So yeah, Major seems like he's going to be working for Vivian, and that is the way this episode ends. Really great stuff overall, but let's just get into this episode and where I think this is going to take us for the rest of the season. So wow, guys, I mean, what a great premiere this really was. I mean, really different for the show as a whole, because we're so used to the show having a formula, of Liv and Clive solving some sort of case, Liv then getting the brain from Ravi, somehow connecting it to the main story, but there really wasn't a case in this episode. It was mainly just the effects of Season 2, and I thought that was really well done, the way that was handled here. But let's talk about Vivian, because either way, wherever we're going, I think Vivian's going to be our villain of the season, and I like that. Again, it's very different from what we've had before. I think Vivian is definitely a viable threat, and the bigger thing about Vivian, once again, is that Major is connected to Vivian, just like he was to Vaughn, but at this point, it's not because, Vaughn's forcing him to, it's because Major could only find a job from Vivian. So I don't really know what is going to happen with these mercenaries and what exactly their whole plan is, but as we know, they're a lot more ferocious and just a lot more powerful than other zombies we've seen. So who really knows where this is going to go, what Vivian's whole plan is there, but I really do think it's interesting what she wants to do. You can understand why she wants to do this. I mean, every day more and more people are being infected by, either Max Rager or someone being scratched. So everyone is turning into zombies left and right, or if it's because of Blaine, just other ways that's happening. But I think what Vivian is planning to do, I think is very interesting, because Liv now has this thing where, does she want to work with them? Does she not? And I don't really know where exactly that's going to go. If she does work with Vivian, if she, actually decides to stay away from Vivian, I think is definitely, again, going to be very interesting. And I like, again, that Clive is very well connected to this with Wally. We don't know much about Wally as a character, but I'm sure we're going to find out more, via flashbacks, via having Clive on the show. And I like that Clive, can't really take on this case because Wally is connected to it, and Clive, again, has a personal connection to Wally, and he obviously can't be on the case because of that. I think overall that's very interesting. I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen there, as far as what goes on between Clive and Wally. He really did have this connection to him, so I think that's going to be very interesting as well. But the other side of it is Major. I think Major's plot this season is very well done, because it seems like everywhere Major goes, he's constantly ridiculed for being the Chaos Killer. Not just that, he's frowned upon. Everyone frowns upon, which is understandable. I mean, what he did was really wrong. But, that was only because Vaughn really would not let up. He kind of just had to do it. So everyone's, kind of staying away from Major. No one really wants to talk to him. So it would make sense why he would work for Vivian. He doesn't really have any sort of personal connection there. She could care less about the Chaos Killer because she's involved with much worse mass killings and things like that. She's involved in a lot worse than that. So she doesn't really care that Major's doing all this damage. And I think, again, the way they set that up was very well well presented. I really did love the way all of that was done. There was a lot of exposition going on with Vivian this episode, but it was necessary. We really needed to know, how did she become a zombie? How did she have this connection here? What's really going to happen? And the bigger part of it all is how long are Liv and Clive and Ravi and all of them, how are they going to be able to withhold this secret? Because as we know, Liv does not want them, denounced to the public. She does not want the public to know about zombies because she knows that humans are going to go after. She doesn't really want a war to start up. She's trying to keep things as, delicate as possible. It's a very delicate manner, obviously. She is a zombie, and obviously she cares about zombies, but there are much worse zombies out there, and there are a lot more than she thought there were, and you can tell how overwhelmed she is about all this, and I thought, again, that was definitely very interesting. So are they going to get involved? Are they going to stay away? That's something else I'm very interested in getting into, is what Liv really decides to do, and if they're really going to be able to keep, stopping all of these, confessions and all these people who were victims of Max Rager, because, there were a lot of people at that party, and there are a lot of people who are still alive from that party. After all, it was on, TV and things like that, so who knows really where that's going to go. I think all that's going to be very interesting. And then, of course, the whole thing going on with Blaine. I was worried about Blaine losing his memory because David Anders is so great, and I love his charisma. He's so fun as that character. I really was not looking forward to seeing him, losing his memory for most of the seasons, but it seems like even though he has lost his memory, the charisma and the fun of Blaine is still there. He's quickly starting to get his memory back, and he has this connection to Peyton, as we know right now. And it seems that him and Peyton actually might start something, and I think it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. But there's also Boss. Boss is still out there. He knows that Blaine's alive, and who knows how that's all going to go down, because I like that the threat of Boss is still there. And there's the other thing is the whole thing that Ravi said, that, there are only 17 people who can get this cure, and, Blaine could be one of those people, but who knows if he's actually going to be. He's not aware of that right now. I don't think he's even aware that there is a cure right now, so we'll have to see really where that's going to go, where they're really going to take Blaine this season. Blaine is going in a much different direction, and I think overall that's very interesting, but also Angus being alive. Again, Blaine has no previous knowledge of Angus, so how's Blaine really going to react to all that? I don't really know. I think it's going to have insurmountable damage on a lot of things, and I think it's going to create a lot of problems for Blaine. But honestly, after what Blaine has done for 2 seasons, I think he kind of deserves it, honestly. After all of the shit he's put them through. He didn't do a lot last season, but he still definitely had a fair amount of damage. He did kind of screw things up for Peyton. He got her involved with things. He tortured his father. Just a lot of things that Blaine did, and I'm very interested in seeing where all of that does go, but I'm also interested in seeing if we're still gonna, what's gonna happen with Clive, because Clive's position, he's still definitely, I think the more people that are starting to gain up on Major, I think the more people are gonna start to gain up on Clive, because Clive is just as responsible. He's the one who let Major go. He's the one who thought what Major did was fine. Now, obviously, he doesn't think what Major did was fine, but he did it to protect Major, and he did to protect, Liv and all of them, so that's why he did that, but I think there's definitely going to be a big consequence of what he did, so I'm very interested in seeing where that ends up going as well. Overall, guys, it was a fantastic premiere. Really, my only complaints are, like I said, I'm really not looking forward to if we're going that direction with Ravi, Peyton, and Blaine. I don't want to see a love triangle between them. I like Peyton and Ravi. I've always thought Ravi's crush on Peyton is really is like one of the cute. I just really do like it. I think it's really cute that they have this connection. I think they bond very well together. So I do want to see where that ends up going. Definitely, I want to see those two together, and I don't want to see Blaine get involved with that. I hope that they don't have some sort of a love triangle there. I just feel like the show's past it. It's not needed, and Ravi has enough going on already. I think Blaine also has enough going on already. We don't need a love triangle between those three. I don't want to see that happen. And there was a lot of exposition in this premiere, so there definitely was a lot to get introduced to. But as a whole, I thought they very well set up the stakes for this season. I thought they really did show how much more integral a lot of, plotting is, how much more, how the bond that the characters have. The dynamics are changing, the story's changing as well, and this really could be a game-changing season for the show, and I'm very interested in seeing how that all gets done. But I really do love this premiere overall. I'm definitely going to give iZombie Season 3, Episode 1, Heather just got a little bit smoother, a 4.5 out of 5, or an A-. So over, guys, for this episode of iZombie, let me know guys thought this episode overall. Like I said, from here on out, guys, I will be reviewing every episode, so look forward to my next review where I will be reviewing episode 2, the latest episode of iZombie, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.